How's it going? That's such a cool little feature. How's it going? It's Nate Mumford. We are live once again, 11 o'clock here, quarantining still in Danbury, Connecticut. How's it going? How's your week? What do you got plans this weekend? Anything exciting going on? Hopefully you do. Listen, as always, we're live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern, as part of our RCS Live. Hope you can hear me loud and clear over here. I've got my new... I got a studio mic from over at our office in White Plains. And so hopefully I sound pretty good, making sure V levels are good and all that good stuff. So thanks for checking in. Today we're going to talk about GSelector and building GSelector clocks. Yes, exciting stuff. We did some advanced clock features in previous videos. As always, you can check them out over at rcsworks.com/RCS-live. And then, of course, if you want to see more detailed versions, there's an RCS blog there. Just go to rcsworks.com, blog on the top right, and then you can see there all the detailed explanations of all of that good stuff. So, yeah, let's dive right into it, shall we? Talk about GSelector clock building, the basics, if you will. And by the way, before I forget, your friendly neighborhood Nate, backups. Take your backups, take your data exchanges, make sure they're working, everything looks great. Don't forget our data exchange recovery console is up and running. That's free, part of your service with any Selector or GSelector product. And if you have Zeta as well, make sure you check out those overnight backups. Of course, we're looking for beta users, GSelector 490. Those are the flex clocks, as well as Zeta 5.20.1, that brand new version as well. We got videos on both of those for you to check out. And finally, too, FTS, Field Technician Services. It's business as usual for them. That's my housekeeping. Let's dive right into here and talk about some GSelector clocks, right? So, AJ, thanks for checking in. V, thank you for checking in as well. I do have my comments section over here too. So just so you know, any comments you give, I can show them here on the screen and also talk about them live in real time. So if any other questions, let me know. We are here to help and answer those questions for you live in real time. So we're working in GSelector. I got my dark mode turned on here. I'm still using my 4.80.396 version. So just so you know, this is what we're kind of talking about here. And again, we're looking at the clocks tab, the definition tab, and right in here. So I thought what we'd do here is kind of talk about the basics and then slowly graduate to kind of the more advanced GSelector topics, which again can be found in other GSelector videos. So what am I looking at here? Remember, everything in GSelector, it's all their rotations, right? So when we go to the goals tab, this is going to tell us exactly what should turn over and how. That's the idea, right? Remember, the goals tab is going to show you what's turning over, and that's based on the day parts and the grids itself. And if you're wondering what is being called for in your clock structure, there is an option here called clock requests. You can see it's broken down by category, where I could essentially click this and see exactly what's going on, as well as down here, the total number of positions. So what I'm seeing here is, let me see my clock requests for my category A in my grid default, right? Everything here is all tied together. So what I can do is go back to the clocks tab right here, and I have clocks in definition, and I have a lot of information here that I'm looking at. Do not feel intimidated by this. What we're seeing here is all of our clocks defined here. We have essentially our 60-minute clock grid, our circle right here, showing me all my events. I have here this window you may or may not see. This is the clock element selection. You can see I can have it enabled or disabled. It's the classic version 15. If you're a visual learner and you want to see everything here, you can essentially take this, drag it over, and you can copy it that way, or simply just add it on the right-hand side. There is no right or wrong way to do this, just so you know. You've heard me say this numerous times. GSelector is about you and applying your music philosophy and workflows. So if you interpret things one way, that's great. You can interpret things somewhere else too if you wanted to. So the idea here is essentially you want to go and you want to build a clock structure, a 24/7 clock grid. Again, clocks in assignments. This is my 24/7 grid. That's what GSelector will reflect and respect. The definition is the individual clocks themselves. Hey, Pina, how's it going? And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to chime in and let me know. So what we're doing here is essentially going to build a clock. Now, I can do this a couple different ways. I'm a really big believer in working smarter, not harder. And so what I would do is essentially go and take an existing clock and duplicate it right through here, right? Save clock as. I would take all of these elements because you can see there's a lot here. There's exact time markers, there's spot blocks, there's links, there's categories. They're all built into here, right? So sometimes if you inherit a database, it's easier to duplicate and manipulate than it is to essentially go and create one from scratch, right? So there are tools here. So for example, save clock as, or for example, copy clocks to other stations. This is a great tool. I'll be 100% honest with you. One of the reasons that I upgraded when I was a program director from version 12 to GSelector was because I was building radio stations. And of course, a lot of us have that same kind of core foundation of music philosophy. And so for me, I knew what I wanted to do, and then I would slightly tweak it based on the format itself. So if I knew that I was going to essentially keep the base, the foundation the same, why would I recreate that from scratch, right? Why don't I copy it over? So you can see here the copy clocks to other stations. Remember, GSelector is an enterprise piece of software, one island. All of the stations or people are on the island or database. They can talk amongst themselves. So what I have here is all my clocks, the desired stations, and what I'm copying over. Just so you know, make a key point here. All right. So Rich, for example, song category group. What is that telling you? Remember that, right? Right, Rich? Rich knows. Song category group. Remember, you have category groups and you have categories. You usually have a 1-to-1 ratio, but you can always have one category group is being called for in the clocks that respects all of your categories. So when I do copy clocks over from one station to the next station, I will create that category group. However, I will not create that category. That's a very important thing to note. So you might find yourself copying clocks from station A to station B. And what you might see is a little bit of a disconnect, right? Sometimes you're missing a step and there's something in there, like, so you go to schedule log and you're like, wow, everything is unscheduled. I have no scheduled songs. What's going on? And that's because over here, goals and categories. Again, this is my category group. Sorry, this is my category. This is my category group. Again, category groups on the top. And what I just expanded is my category. I always tell users that don't forget, if you ever are confused about which is which, use the example of, I always give, the classic hits station. I need this position to be a 1970s record. But what type of 1970s record? Is it a power, sub-power, filler, stuff like that? But you know, in that position, we are talking about a 1970s record. So that the category group would be 1970s. And of course, the categories would be 1970s power, 1970s, secondary, so on and so forth, if you want to. So what we can do here is go back to the clocks, right? So clocks and definition, and we have all these things here, okay? So let's build, you want to do a clock truly from scratch? Because that's kind of the exercise here. So we'll call this a RCS live blank clock, right? So there are some options here. I'll be honest with you. You can do the F1 to help to see it for yourself, but usually those are pretty much default for the most part. If you want to play around with it, and you can. I won't want to confuse you with too many details there. So you can see off the bat, I have kind of some generic templates here. The first thing I want to do is isolate it the way I want to isolate it, right? You can see there's some automation types here. And for this purpose, I'm just going to delete these. And all I'm doing, by the way, is I'm using my keyboard. I'm hitting the delete key, not the backspace key, the delete key, right? So I'm clicking on this cell, hitting delete, clicking on the cell, hitting delete, right? So my goal here is to show you some little tips and tricks. This window in particular, when I have new users talking about building clocks, it's very straightforward, yes. However, there's subtle nuances that I like to elaborate on for users to work a little bit faster, knowing what's going on in this window. Very simply put, you can see there I have a hold category. Obviously, between you and me, you know we don't want to have the hold category. There's nowhere in there. So what you can do is you can essentially click on this, right? So if I go and say position 10, I want to change position 10 from a Z hold category to an A category. Now, if you'll notice, if I left click once, and I'll pick this actual cell here, I am highlighting the entire row first. See that? Just a left click, simple left click. But if I want to change the category, I then click the description, right? Now think about this for a second. If I click here once, I'm in that column, I'm in that row. I click it again, I have the drop down. So what I like to show users, right? Because when you're building clocks, you're usually building multiple clocks, editing multiple positions, right? So what you can do here is click on this, hit on A, and what you notice is if I go on 10, I'm just going to double click on here, right? So double click, boom, boom, and then I have an option of picking my category, right? Simply put, boom, there's A. If I want to change position 1, instead of just, working smarter, I'm just going to double click, right? And there's A. Go to position 14, double click, A, stuff like that. So you can see when you're doing this multiple times, knowing the idea that I can go right to double clicking in that description, it's going to save you a lot of time. Trust me, I'm telling you right now. So now we have the option of what do we want to do. On this clock element selection, you can see that's that option right here. I can enable that or disable that. Again, it's a visual thing. So song category groups, you can see here that I have all my category groups. I can single click on A. I'll pick a classical just to kind of show you here. I'll left click and drag it over, right? And you can see, boom, there's classical. Very, very simply put. I can click on the plus here. And you notice, by the way, I have the same drop down options. Click on song category group, but now you'll notice it's a Z hold, where again, double click on that cell, click on, let's say, an A, and boom, there's my A category. So now we're talking about how you build your clocks. And I respect a lot of the ideas of I'm a position person versus a timed person. Remember, think of those segue bands. If you remember the last GSelector video we did, we talked about identifying transitions. That's the idea, identifying transitions. If you have, let's say, a 5-song music sweep, and you don't want to have we'll just say a rock record into a rock record into a rock record, right? So how does that work to you? Is that a song position? Because it sounds like it's a song position. Or I don't want to have, within a 15-minute period, 2 rock songs in the same music sweep. There's no right or wrong answer there, but you can see where if I want 15 minutes, that's going to be an attribute, goals, balance, attributes, and then a minimum separation, versus a position, which is going to be the segue bands, don't play rock into rock. That's the idea there, right? So what we can do is essentially, kind of manipulation of both, right? So however you interpret this, you can do it. I'm going to go kind of based on song position here and then tweak it. So I know that I have, and you know what, we'll do a PPM clock because that's more fun. So PPM clocks here, at least in the States, are the concept is that you have kind of 0 to 12. You want to get to commercials quick and then bounce back to your regular programming, right? So we have essentially, what is it? 0, 12, spot block is 12 to 16. Then we have 16 to 30, 30 to 35, and then 35 to about 48, and then 48 to 54, something along those lines, right? That's the idea. Of course, give or take a couple numbers in there, but that's, for the most part, the idea. So what I can do here is essentially I can start building my clock. So I have a couple song positions. Again, work smarter. I don't want to delete these to re-add them later. What I want to do is utilize this airtime to show where I am in the 60-minute clock, right? So what I can do here is you can see that's 0, 3:22, 6:45, 10:08. Oh, Nate, why is yours 10:08 and mine has something different like, I don't know, 12:35? That's because we take the category here as described by, in this case, song category A, and you look at the runtime. This runtime is the average number of elements that can schedule within that category, right? The average runtime is 322. And you can see it's a demo database. So they're pretty kind of generic, but make a note here of the classical, right? Because I got a couple classical elements in there. They're obviously longer. You can see the average runtime of my classical category is 25 minutes, right? So again, that's where that 25 minutes is coming from. That's why you see 47 to 72. That's the reason why you see that jump. So again, 0, 322, 645. This is all because of my run times in the average category. So let's pick the first 3 song music sweep, right? So that's an A. I'll pick a B. Double click on the cell. Remember, that's an R. I'm at currently, and again, this runtime, this airtime is when this position starts. So position 3 starts at 640. Position 4 starts at 10:05. And that's because the runtime of song category R is what, Rich? I'm picking on you. 325, right? I'll pick on Henrik next. So I have here 10:06. This is 13:25. If I want to have my, spot block happen sometime around 12, then guess what? I might do, I'll pick this as an O category. So there's that 13:53. It's fine. That's where I want it to be, right? That's where I want. So thank you, Rich. I love it. Yeah. So at this point in time, I want to tell my automation system it's time to go to your traffic. And depending on what your automation system is, most of them require something here, the exact time marker. What's an exact time marker? There are 2 interpretations of this. There is integration with Zeta and there's non-integration stations with Zeta. When you think of the flat file back in the day, that flat file assignment, the concept is that if I'm looking at that paper log, I need to know that exactly at 12, I have some type of ETM reset, some type of time to define this is going to be a new exact time marker. This is going to change the airtime, which is going to coincide with the automation system and your traffic system. Most traffic systems need to be somewhere in the window of your automation and your music scheduling software. Because very simply put, if I'm telling traffic, if traffic is telling the automation system, play a commercial at 30 after, and my music scheduler is saying that I am looking for traffic at, let's say, 12 after, there's a disconnect there, right? There's a disconnect. So I want to have a PPM clock. I want to have a 12-minute ETM. That should be give or take a window. That is where I want it to be. And you can see here, I don't really have an ETM of 12. So let's build one. We're going to save this clock here. We're going to go to our boom, exact time markers on the tab over here. Notice how you have everything isolated here within the actual clocks tab. Break notes. If you have something like, some of our competitors, they use break notes. That's in here. We have stop sets, spot blocks. Difference between spot sets and spot blocks. Spot blocks is an on and an off. And because there's an on and an off, we can include things called interstitials. Very simply put, it means that I can put things in between. So the classic example is if I have, let's say, a traffic, right? If you have, let's say, 5 commercials, and in the 4th one, after the 4th commercial, we want to have something like, WRCS FM is back after this. And then we play the last one. What we would do here is have essentially 4 traffic positions, a sweeper that says back to the music next, and then the very last commercial in there as well. That's interstitials. You want to cover more about it, let me know, but we can go from there. So what we want to do here is we want to create a brand new exact time marker, hit the plus on here, and now we're defining, well, what time is it? Minute, second. Remember, we don't care about hours here because every clock will have its own specific hour. We only care about the minutes and the seconds. So here is I want 12, right? And do I want, let's say, 1:12 p.m., 4:12 p.m., 6:12 a.m.? It doesn't matter because the clock structure is calling for the hour. I am merely just utilizing the minutes and the seconds. So now I have the different types of exact time markers. Very common question, right? Here's how it works. Hit is essentially you're trying to identify as close as I can to that marker. So if I have a 12-minute exact time marker, I want to know how close am I from hitting that exact time marker. And I'll actually do this. I'll create one hit for you here. Hit a little save. I'll click another one, and I'll put this as another 12, right? I'm going to show you an example in real time. There's reset, which is going to reset the time. Remember, for the actual traffic log itself, no matter where we are, it's going to say, I am currently at 12 minutes, play my traffic. This is the most common used exact time marker for importing traffic with your music scheduling software. The idea is that you always have an exact time marker, and then immediately after, the exact element you want to schedule. Again, very simply put there. You can go and say, I want to have my traffic hit at 12 after, and my traffic software needs to see that at 12, there is a command that says insert traffic, stuff like that. That's the reset, right? That's most common. We have the soft exact time marker, right? Soft pretty much means it's a music station exact time marker. Play everything up to the defined time. In this case, it's 12 minutes. And then after that, if I hit past the time as defined by the exact time marker, skip everything to that point up to the exact time marker. So very simply put, if I had, let's say 0, 3, 6, we'll go all the way up to like 15, right? And if the last, let's say the fourth song starts at 15 and the third song carries you over past the 12-minute mark, then we will drop, your automation system will drop that fourth song, look at the exact time marker, and play commercials, right? I know it's a hard thing not to visualize, but that's the idea. Then we have the hard ETM. That's your news talk. Hard ETMs are, I don't care where you are, what's going on. When I say 12 o'clock or 12, 12, boom, you're done immediately. Stop what you're doing. If you're in the middle of a Lady Gaga song, stop what you're doing and do the next element. Play the next element. Those, again, are for more news talk formats if you want to do that. So soft, music, let the element finish playing. Hard, don't let it finish playing. Stop what you're doing and play the next element. So when you have Zeta integrated, we respect all these exact time markers. Everything here, the soft, the hard, the resets, the hits, they're all respected because remember, GSelector and Zeta are live integrated 100%. There's no API references or any of that good stuff. So if you have a non-integrated GSelector, totally fine, very common. All that means is these soft and hards usually don't really translate. There's some kind of command, either a caret or an asterisk, that you have to include in the log for your non-Zeta automation system to read it. Again, very common. Don't worry about that. I just want to let you know that in Zeta, we respect this. In others, there's usually some type of element in there. So we went to an ETM reset. There's an over-under in there. Again, kind of more Zeta focused, but if you want to do it, you can. I'm going to save this, go back to my definition. I'm moving quickly for time purposes here. And what you can see is I have now exact time markers. If I do that hit, right? So I click on this, drag it over. You'll see if I put it, let's say right here, you'll see that it's kind of hard to see right now. There is a plus 5 minutes and 15 seconds because I'm trying to say 12 minutes and I'm firing this element at essentially 17, thus difference in time. Or I can go in here and go back and do the ETM reset. And you can see that I'll just put it, let's say right here. Even though this is 24 minutes, I'm going to reset this. And you'll notice that everything is going to reset to 12, right? Very simply put. Now, be careful with that because obviously if you're doing some kind of network feed, that's going to come into play, right? For your timing goals and all that good stuff. However, it does respect your automation system. So that also comes into play as well. So we have some clock elements here. Oh, I moved this in the wrong position. What can I do? Well, there is a move up down here. Just so you know, there's a move up down. So I could simply take this, put this where I want it to. You can see the ETM hit is plus 153. I'll take that as a win. Or if I want to go and put the ETM reset in there, you can put that in as well. You do not need both. I'm just showing you the ETM hits. So I'm going to delete the ETM hit because the reset is the one you want. Now, I have a spot block here. I'm going to take my spot block. I'll put a spot block, Zeta spot block right after. Boom, there we go. Now I'll build some imaging pieces here. I'm going to have my link category group. I'll throw an A quickie sweeper in here. I'll put a D sweeper in between these two. Oh, I want to have a voice track. I forgot about that. Okay, so let's go ahead and take away this link category. We're going to move it down a position. We're going to go and decollapse exact time markers. Go to my voice tracks. I'll grab a 10-second voice track here. Put it in. If I click it properly there. Take the 10-second voice track. Put it in between. Come on. I'll do empty voice track. Put that in there. Boom. There's the empty voice track. So now I have essentially song, link, song, voice track, song, link, song, exact time marker, spot block. Okay. Now, for time purposes, I can keep on building this, right? But again, work smarter, not harder. So what I can do is shift click. See that? Left click to isolate an element, shift click to highlight all of them involved. See that? So click, shift click. And now I have some options here. Look over here. I have the up, down. Of course, I have the cut, the copy, the paste, Control V. What I can do in here is I can right click, or I can simply do Control C. I can go down the very bottom, Control V, and boom, look at that. There's all my elements. So now you can see working a little smarter, not harder, right? So what you can do is we can go in here and say, give me a 5-song music sweep. So Rich, per your example, Rich was saying that he has his commercials at 20. Well, 20, 40, 60. Why don't I create one just subgroup, extend it, and then make my changes? And again, remember, double click on the cell. So I can go back here. This should really be a different category. Double click on it, change it to an LDR, boom, and we're good to go. Rich brought up a great question, right? Voice tracks. Can you isolate voice tracks? 100%. There's voice tracks there, right? So we can do is hit a plus here and say this, quickie, right? Something like that. Hit OK. Go back over here and do, let's say, artist break, right? We can click again and do promo copy 1. Hit save. Hit save on this. Go back to your definition. And again, I have those now available here in my voice tracks. I just have to probably do a reset here, refresh. And I have those. There's artist break, quickies. And now I can go define these in here. Right click, left click, drag them over, stuff like that. I will say though, Rich, if you have Zeta, do not forget my favorite thing, treat live event links as voice tracks. Because once you have that, any link can be a voice track. Go to linker over here, right? I'm going to go, I think I have a couple examples here of something, but I'll just, I'll create a new one here for time purposes. I'll do a short, quick one, hit a plus. See that live right there? Click that checkbox as live. That plays a role, right? That coincides with Zeta. So if I have a category called voice tracks, and I have what we just created, the artist break, quickie break, promo 1, stuff like that, I can actually rotate those using linker. And then I can rotate them with specific hour restrictions, attributes, coincide things, all of that good stuff. So if you are a PD that loves control, that's definitely me. What you can do is you can rotate what you want your jocks to say, and that will translate over to Zeta. We respect those titles over in Zeta. So there's some really cool things. You're looking to schedule those, right? And again, if I go back to the goals and clocks, you can see that I'm working linear throughout GSelector. Boom, I'm right there. I'm good to go. So that's kind of some of the basics of clocks. Utilize these tools, expand the grids. There's some content filters in here if you don't need to see some things. Again, the run times are in here. The air times are in there based on average turnovers. Left click, drag and drop, Control C, Control V to copy and paste, all that good stuff. Double click on the cells. Those are all in there as well. You can then see if I want to know what happened, I can click on last edited here. You can see that I have last edited 225, and I have the user who did it as well. That's in here too. Very important stuff. One thing we haven't talked about is I'm going to minimize some of these little tabs here. So just very quickly going through each one of these. Artist blocks for your artist blocks. Automation system event. That's going to be if you have any of those. Break notes are obviously just standard break notes. Browse lists are those browse lists you call for, right? Remember back from the library and browse lists. We got videos on those from the past. The control events, if you have Zeta, this is important because if you do have a Zeta event, what you can do here and go in, you can play, let's say, a Zeta rotation, drag it into the log structure itself. Once you have it in the log structure, what you want to do is you want to use this info field to, this is where you define the rotator. And it goes by number too. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, for example, that's in there, right? So Khalid, makes sense, right? So if you're using a rotator in Zeta, how do you call for it in GSelector Clocks? Control events, you have a whole bunch of options, and then the info is where you put it. And again, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, hit OK, you're done. Call it a day. That's in there too for you, just so you know. You can see there's macros as well. So for example, Nate's macro test, if you have, let's say, syndicated morning shows and you're moving things and moving macros around, you can call for those in the Zeta clocks, or if you're integrated with GSelector, call for them in your GSelector clocks. Very simply put, when you create a macro in Zeta, it's available from this list. How do you know it's a macro? Zeta macro, Zeta macro, Zeta macro, and Zeta macro. You can see I have a bunch of tests here because this is just what I do, right? Nate test, publish macro, they're all in there. You've seen these from past videos as well. So that's the control event for Zeta. Some really important stuff there. Leading link and trailing links. Those are your related links for clock positions. We have previous videos on those. Of course, linker category group, linker browse list, rolling positions. We're going to get to right now. So remember, rolling positions. This is going to be essentially, I want to go and reference a grid in a rolling clock. So very simply put, I can say I'm a rolling clock, I'm a rolling clock, I'm a rolling clock, something along those lines. And again, remember, I can always do Shift Control, Control C, Control V, multiple positions, work smarter. And then what that position will do is when I click on this rolling clock, and I'm sorry, I'm going to jump for one quick second here just to wrap this up. Specific links are going to call for specific links in the log. So for example, if you have a top of the hour that is specific to a certain function, I want to make sure I use a specific link, right? Also notice specific link if it's live, spot block, spot set, theme song, trailing link, twofers. Twofers are playing the songs back to back. It's a one position. Click on this. There's no drop down for twofers because it respects whatever was scheduled in here. If you want to have a threefer weekend, you can go over here and just drop in the twofers. And of course, that will respect this twofer, which respects this element scheduled, right? So twofers, you can have as many twofers as you want. All the twofer will do is respect the previous, whatever was scheduled. If I do something like this and put the twofers at the top of the hour, guess what? These will not schedule. Nate, why won't they schedule? Go ahead, Rich. Why won't they schedule? Because there's nothing before it to use as a reference. Some little troubleshooting there for you, just so you know. So to go back to our rolling clocks, apologize for jumping around here a little bit, but the rolling clocks, we pick a grid or clock, right? So that's what we want to do. So what we can do here is in this position, we say, I am a rolling clock. That's the grid we want to reference. Very simply put, if I go to, and again, I'll delete these two twofers because I don't want to confuse you guys. So I have that same music sweep, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a spot block. I want this position to be a truly unique position. I'm going to change the change type to a rolling. I'm going to pick my rolling grid, or in this case, I am a rolling clock. Once it's there, I'm going to go back over here and show you there is I am a rolling clock grid. Whoa, what is this? What's going on, right? So this is essentially when I reference the position here, right? So there's I'm a rolling clock. This is the first song, second song, third song, fourth song, fifth song, rotating throughout the element, right? So in the rolling clock, there's my first, which is an A, second's a B, third, fourth, fifth, you keep on going. This could be a rolling clock. It's truly rolling. Things are always moving. How many positions can I have in a rolling clock? I'll be honest with you. You got as many as you want. I found one user back in the day. Kudos to him. He had like a 3-hour rolling clock. And that's what he did. Just rotated. Everything was a rolling clock. So Nate, what is the best option? A rolling clock or a scheduled clock? It really is up to you. This is how I like to define the difference between rolling clock and a regular controlled clock. Okay. So let me ask you a question. I'm going to pick on here. I'll pick on Khalid for a second, or whoever is still on here. So if I have the first song in the hour in this clock, what song category is going to play at the top of the hour in this clock every single time, no questions asked? It's going to be in A, right? Because that's the first song in the hour. If I change this first song in the hour, double click on cell, change to rolling, pick my rolling clock. Where am I? I am a rolling clock. Same question for you. What song category is going to play at the top of the hour? Well, you tell me. I'm going to save this, go back to I'm a rolling clock. Well, where did we leave off? Did we leave off at an O? Did we leave off at an R? Did we leave off at a B? It's all math. It's all turnovers. So whatever you had scheduled, the next in line will schedule. That's the idea. So there really is no right or wrong answer, right? Because again, it's whatever's queued up. That's the idea. So you can see this is either great or bad. Me personally, the way that I program, I want my first song on the hour to be a core song. People know it. People love it. Boom. I'm playing this right now, right? This is a power record. Every top of the hour, power record, familiar record. If I have a rolling clock, and if I have a, let's say, a hold category or a recurrent or a gold, there's a chance a recurrent or gold would be in that clock. Is that good? Is that bad? It's not on me. It's on you. It's your music philosophy. That's the idea. Maybe you do something like a clock goal and you have a rolling clock that says maximize the energy for the top of the hour. Or maybe you go here to constraints and you do something like hit a plus on here. I'll call this sound code or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't really matter. I hit a plus, go to the attribute here, type in S for sound code, and it has to equal. I'm moving fast here. Play with this on your own time. I'm sorry. You can see there's Nate's core songs, right? So core song. Oh, that was brutal. Core songs, right? So hit OK there, hit save. So now when I go back to my definition, even though we don't know what category is playing in that rolling clock, I can still have a core song there. Boom, core song. The other thing I did was I isolated elements. If you're, let's say, a PPM clock, last song of the hour, you don't want to have, let's say, Tiny Dancer play. So if it's 59:59, technically speaking, that song can play. Oh, I have, again, Tiny Dancer. That's what, 7:32, something along those lines. I am pushing my entire next hour, 7 minutes and 31 seconds. That could be a problem for you. So maybe you have the last song in the hour. You have don't play a long song at the end of the hour. How do I define a long song? Go to your library, sort by runtime, filter it out, multi-song changer, create the attribute, I am a long song, boom, isolate it there, right? So again, what I did there is constraints, not going to save my changes. You'll notice I have a long song here. It says if the content is a long song, do not schedule it, right? Don't schedule the long song and the content that's in that exact position, right? As Rich says, we've all been there. So at that point in time, I'm going to do a little quick here just for time purposes. We have, of course, every one of these definitions assigned to a clock grid. That clock grid, you can highlight by the day. You can also highlight it by a shift click or highlight some of those lines. So just be aware there's some behavior here. So if I just go and I'll use this as an example. I have 3 elements. If I right click this and hit copy, if I click over here in a single cell, I can still do Control V. It will paste all 3 in a row because that's what I told it to do. If I highlight, let's say 6, hit Control C or copy. If I do the 11 o'clock hour, click V, You'll notice only one changes. And why is that? Thursday is an entirely new day. It's different from the Wednesday grid itself, right? Again, work smarter, harder in this window. I can work left to right, up and down, double click on the headers to move around this window. I can always right click here and do assign clocks. If you ever are working in this window and you're working quick, just know when you first build a new clock, it's always gonna be the very bottom of this grid until you close, reopen GSelector, and then it's gonna organize it based in alphabetical order. But when you're first doing it, it's at the bottom. Kind of helpful. I like that because I like building all my clocks, setting it to a grid, calling it a day. This window is very much a set it and forget it window. If you ever have to override this, let's say you have a sporting event, I would have a clock that is sporting event. Then from there, I would have there's two options. I have a specific clock override. And Kai, thank you for checking in. Always appreciate it. I can go here and I can say from this day at this time, from this day, from this time, override it with this special clock, right? And I'll do, let's say, a Sunday special clock. This is overriding the individual clock without affecting the normal 24/7 grid. If I want to change the grid, think of a holiday schedule. Think of Christmas, right? I go to my schedule. There's my default rotations. And yes, just in case you know, this goes from 1 to 31. So if you want to have a different grid for every day of the week, you can do that. It's a lot of math, but you can do that. We have a lot of PDs who like to have alternate grids. So a primary and a secondary, up to you. It's all good, whatever you want to do. I'm not going to save my changes. There is a date override here. You can see my default is all in there. But if I hit a plus, I can say, hey, GSelector, from the 26th through the 28th, play the holiday no jocks grid. And you can see there's the default, there's the override, then we return back to where we are, right? No right or wrong answer. Think of the clock overrides as sporting events. It's just special programming. Think of the override grids as a true 24/7 week. I'm changing the overall schedule. Again, think of Christmas and holidays in there. And of course, in the default rotations, you have some options there as well. If you're ever curious why there's all these tabs here, they all serve a purpose. Remember, the clocks tab, right? We define a clock. We then assign that clock to a grid. If we want to override that clock, we have the override option. If we want to override the grid schedule, we go to the grid schedule. We want to either change the default rotation or we want to override dates. Look at what this is telling you. It's very, very descriptive. I'm a clock. I define it. I assign it to a grid. That grid has a clock override. If not, I want to define my grids. I want to set a schedule for those grids, a default rotation, an override date. That's all in here. Again, very much set it and forget it if you wanted to do that, right? So last call for questions here, Kai or Rich. You want any last call for questions, let me know. Boom. Let's see here. Kai was saying some streams. Kai, yes. Kai's got a streaming question. I will get to you in a second there. I will DM you. As always, we're here to answer your questions. So if you have a certain question that might not pertain to today's topic, you can always direct message us, wherever your social media platform is. We're more than happy to help you out here too. You can always email me, nmumford@rcsworks.com. That works as well. The last thing I wanted to show you, again, last call for questions, is all of these columns. What do they all represent, right? So, of course, we have the position. And by the way, if you notice, I'll go here. If I take out I'll just do links only for a second. Notice it respects the song and link position. So 2, 6, 24, 28. A lot of times we have users saying, why isn't my clock in sequential order? Check this filter. Most likely, instead of having all, you have probably songs, links, spots, but you're probably missing the others in there. And again, spot blocks, you'll see. Remember, the spot blocks have a on and off. If the spot block starts at position 31, The on is 31. The off is at 32. The next element is 33. All that makes sense? I've got a lot of users who asked that question as well. Airtime we talked about, type we talked about, description we talked about, clock goal we mentioned earlier. Those are the advanced clock positions. Maximize or minimize this position. It's a goal-based element, so we'll do its best to achieve that. The fallback is going to be, okay, if I can't find a song here, fall back to a different category. That's what the fallback is. Again, the fallback tab right here. I know I'm moving very quickly. The idea is that if I can't schedule an element, fall back to this theme or group in this category based on these threshold settings. That's a fallback. Pretty cool stuff. Me personally, I like the optimizations because I can go and group multiple categories together using one optimization. If you have questions on that, we have past videos on GSelector optimizations, or just poke me and I'll put you in the right direction. So after that, let's see here. We have the constraints we talked about. The chains, these again are mostly Zeta for the most part. Otherwise, your flat file assignment will respect those chains. Very simply put, it's just how the element transition to the next one. Don't cover too much into that. Don't forget F1 help guide. We'll totally talk about that. Your timing is if you have a timing goal in there. So for example, if you enable a timing goal, you can say that this could be a droppable position. This can be a replaceable position, back time, stretch. Stretch is important for your stretch and squeeze in your Zeta clocks. Remember, Zeta will pitchless stretch and squeeze to an exact time marker to an exact time marker. If you have a 3-hour show, you want to stretch and squeeze. You define based on per position what elements are allowed to stretch and squeeze. That is defined here. So for example, you might want to stretch a song, but you might not want to stretch another element like a voice track or something along those lines. That's where you isolate those right there. Right, Larry? Does that make sense? We have the fixed position. That's if the element's fixed or not. You can't move it, can't touch it. Hard time, that's in there too. Droppable, that's if it's a droppable song. This lock level is based on GSelector S3 schedule subscription service. That concept is you have one master log with an undefined, unlimited number of affiliates that can receive the master log while maintaining local clocks, local imaging, and local commercials. Schedule, subscription, service, S3. Again, past videos on that. Runtime, the average runtime of the category. Info, we talked about earlier, used to identify non-elements like rotators in Zeta. Is this element a stop set? What's the split behavior of these elements? That's in there as well. And finally, if you're not seeing these columns, or if there's a column you're missing that you need, we can always go to setup. I'm not going to save my changes. Setup, boom. And then from there, we have features and clock. Notice setup, station, features, clock. What does that mean, Nate? It means these are station-specific settings. Enterprise software, station-specific settings. Oh, look at that. I got checkboxes. Do I want to include don't copy, external, fixed, hard time, lock level, skip, timing, timing goal? They're in there. Advanced clock columns, default chain settings in there. You might have going into, let's say, a news talk format. You might want to have a lot of these to be, instead of X overlap, is a pause if you want to do something on those lines. Advanced stuff here. If you're not too familiar with this window, don't go on changing it, right? Don't go in here and start playing with things. This does coincide with some of your automation system, especially if you have Zeta. I highly recommend identify what you're doing. Take A, backups before you make any drastic changes. And then B, make sure you know exactly what you're doing in this window. If you're not familiar, reach out to support, or again, identify what you're trying to do in that moment, right? What am I doing? Am I changing the default chain settings for every single position in my clocks? Or do I have some type of macro that needs to fire, and then I can simply go to the last element in the hour and put a pause chain? Because now position 50 will stop after this is done, opposed to everybody stopping at any given time. Make sense? Okay, let's check last call for questions here. So Kai was talking about Zeta splits. Just so you know, the split behavior is, yes, it's supposed to be for Zeta splits. That's in there too. Rich want to know how to change the average time of spot blocks. There are two forms of philosophy here, Rich. There's the first one, which is the music scheduling. That's where we have the spot. I'm not going to save my changes. I have my stop sets, my spot sets, and my spot blocks. You can see if I double click on here, there's the runtime. Okay. Think about where you are in the world. If I'm telling GSelector I'm a network feed, I need to schedule exactly the way it is. If I say this is a 5-minute spot block, but I only really have in reality 2 minutes of commercials, I'm going to schedule my GSelector clocks with that runtime of 4 minutes because you have told GSelector everything in this spot block is going to be 4 minutes. If you do have traffic integration with GSelector, when you integrate those commercials, you'll get that difference in time. But for the most part, it's wherever you want this to be. Boom, that's where it is. So a lot of users are kind of going, well, oh, my time's all over the place. What's going on? I'm underfilled in my hour. Well, if I make this spot block 10 minutes and I put it all throughout all my clocks, but you and I both know you normally have 4 minutes of spots, you're going to have like a huge discrepancy in music content versus what is actually being scheduled in the on-air system, right? So be aware. Great question there, Rich. Just be aware that's a relative runtime based on what you believe your spot blocks are going to be. There's no right or wrong answer. It depends on what you want it to be. You should know your own spot load. So for example, if you're finding more like it's COVID, I'm having 2 or 3 less minutes of spots per hour. Mostly I have, let's say per the hour, 10 minutes of spots total. I might have 2 5-minute spot blocks. But if you find out that, let's say during your overnights and nights, you're having more like 2 to 3, I might go and create a brand new spot block. And I'll call this spot block overnight, right? And now this one is 2 minutes, right? See how that's a little bit different? That's 2 minutes here versus the spot block morning show, midday show, which have a difference in time. That's going to give you more of a concise time if you find yourself fluctuating your traffic log spot block by spot block. Very simply put. Or, of course, it's incorrectly labeled. If you give a runtime of 10 minutes, it's going to kind of throw off your runtime too. So, yeah, makes sense, Rich. Answer your question for that one right there. By the way, split behavior, that's in there too. I got some friends over here in Connecticut. We were just doing this the other day. There's your split behavior for spot blocks. Of course, you have to define with splits what is what. That's a great teaser because we're going to do that next week for Zeta splits too as well. All right, I've been rambling now for like 54 minutes. Last call for questions here. I'm going through. Boom. Here, Rich, I'll give you some love here. I can do this now. You're welcome, Rich. I love this new feature. It's so cool. Okay. Last call for questions. As always, don't forget to take your backups. I'll see you next week. RCS Live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We also have some great topics coming up with Zeta Splits and Zeta News Talk stations and so much more. Any topics you want covered, let us know. Of course, you can recap all these videos on our archive or our blog over at rcsworks.com. Thank you so much for checking us out. Be safe, wear your masks, and I will talk to you next Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time for RCS Live. See you later.